For the past 2 years, Milwaukee Succeeds has been working to rebrand our collective impact work. This new vision focuses on addressing systemic changes that impede education equity. To do this work well, we knew that we needed to prioritize youth as architects of their own destinies. And although we often talk the talk of youth voice in our work, we often fall short, deteriorating trust while causing additional harm. Our Youth Forward MKE Coalition aspires to break this cycle of misuse by co-designing solutions with youth using a racial equity lens, by supporting them as they learn to navigate and influence existing systems that impede education outcomes, by paying them for their time and expertise, and positioning them at decision-making tables to ensure that there's representation, diverse perspectives in what's usually homogeneous spaces. And by no means has this work been easy. We had to resist our typical ways of being, waiting until youth were consulted before we set our strategic priorities, resisting the urgency of decision makers to provide them with metrics and data points before we set a clear direction, investing in our youth by securing funds to compensate them fairly, and fighting when questioned about our focus on Black male youth, which was data informed but not trusted as a sound decision. Yet we persisted, and today we officially launched this effort. We are honored to have you all here to join us. But what does it look like to authentically engage youth? As part of your pre-work, we shared a youth voice ladder. This ladder serves Taking a look at this, at the bottom rung, there's manipulation, where adults lead everything and we expect young people to just fall in line. Moving up on that ladder, tokenism is one we see often in the nonprofit space, where adults pretty much decide what they want to do and have young people at the end sign off on it. Some people believe that up at the top here, completely youth-driven initiatives are best, where youth lead activities and adults play support roles. But our North Star is youth-adult equity, where all are seen as equals and there's shared responsibility and ownership for outcomes. Bottom line, everyone is seen for their humanity and as experts as we work together toward positive change. So like Fight Club, we only have one rule for those that are interested in joining this coalition. And that is that members must commit to learn how to create spaces where youth and adults have full equity. It's a core belief for this movement and one we will not compromise on. So next up on the agenda, I'll toss it to Quintel so she can talk about what the journey has been like to get to this day and why she thinks it's important that we center youth voice in all of our work.
I'm Hassan, the Strategic Initiatives Manager for Milwaukee Succeeds and lead on our K-12 initiatives and high school success priority. It has been my pleasure to lead this work for the past 2 years to not only build this coalition, but new ways of operating within our organization and hopefully soon our city. Just like many of you, this work has been ongoing for me, and it was in my own classroom and first few years as a middle school language arts teacher that I started to understand all the ways our education system and city had unfortunately failed our young people. It's been 10 years since I taught my first class, and unfortunately, the statistics surrounding the academic achievement of Black students in the city has not changed. It's hard to imagine a future where the racial disparities that currently exist in education, economic mobility, and health outcomes in our community won't exist until we see a difference in the day-to-day lives of our young people in and outside of the classroom. They need to feel seen, they need to feel heard, and we as a community need to approach these issues in a radically different way. Each day, our city is plagued by violence and trauma that sends shockwaves throughout our community, impacting us all, but no one more than our Black youth. We must prioritize our resources to ensure they receive engaging and rigorous learning opportunities that speak to their individual interests, identities, and well-being. They deserve programs and after-school engagement opportunities that are accessible, brings joy, and supports their learning and development to be leaders in their community and access careers that will provide not just a surviving wage, but one in which they can thrive. We must center the lived experiences of those who are most directly impacted by issues and be intentional about shifting power in our community. This cannot stop at a good program here and there or a new initiative. We must fight for system transformation and policy change that sustains change and holds those in power accountable. For Milwaukee Succeeds, this has required us to take a new approach with our work. First, meaningfully engaging our city's youth and taking time to understand the nuances behind the data and what youth were truly navigating. We also spent time building relationships with youth-serving organizations to understand why they've been successful and what barriers exist to prevent them from supporting even more youth in our city. It wasn't until we took the time to listen, learn, and most importantly, admit where we had failed, that we decided on the strategies we would commit to moving forward. Our Design Your Future Fellowship proved that even during the most challenging times, like a pandemic, it is possible to create an inclusive and vibrant space where young people feel valued and empowered to create real change in their community. Now, it is our responsibility to live up to the promise we made to those young people to implement those ideas and not stop there. This coalition will be different. We seek to work alongside youth as partners, valuing their opinions, their experiences, and seeing them as experts on the issues they face each day. Youth Forward MKE has 3 goals, which I'll go over in a moment, but what is central to this coalition is a commitment to operating differently. We must come together to support the most vulnerable and most important in our community because they are our future. I am hopeful that change will come because I see the talent, resilience, and courage of our youth. They will lead us forward.
For Black kids in the inner city, the RC specifically, it's not exactly the best place to actually thrive and grow in. Learn to be more than you see some people are in the streets.
Black male youth gets pushed past a lot, and we never get to see them in positions of power. I feel like we should start centering the black male youth and don't push past them anymore and look towards them as leaders, because a lot of the population, specifically in Milwaukee, is black male youth.
And we need to help them know that they have hope and they have a job, not in the streets, but on being one of the role models, being one of the celebrities if they can, and being the best version of themselves.
The students have to reach out to teachers if they want to talk about their mental health, and the teachers or the staff at the school never reaches out to the students.
See, mental health is gonna affect how students are gonna perform in class, and students are gonna do things, how well they do things. Like, mental health also brings out the good and the bad in people.
Staff, such as teachers and whatnot, should at least try more for their students as well. So it's more of a two-side thing. No one's gonna understand what's going on, and most people usually don't put in the effort of figuring stuff out.
Make the best for the future generation so they can strive and thrive without having to face some problems and situations like what we're doing, what we're fixing right now.
Helping us is not just us that you're helping, you're also contributing to yourself. If you're a citizen of Milwaukee, you're helping yourself and the futures of others as well.
And probably help encourage them to try pull together to try to form a much more larger force. Nothing can be done alone, so might as well help that we all work together on this one.
And so why we're all here is this coalition and really trying to promote 3 priorities and goals. The first is to build authentic partnerships. We're building strong, aligned networks to ensure youth receive the necessary supports and resources. We're building a strategic financing plan, and through that, our goal is to increase resources designated to mental health and workforce development. Creating space is our second goal. We aim to create spaces that center the perspectives and lived experiences of youth, ensuring they are heard and valued. This work includes the implementation of the 6 youth-led Design Your Future proposals. And finally, shift power. We're shifting ways of operating so that young people not only have a seat at the table, but are leading and driving decision-making. Once finalized and adopted, our youth impact assessment will highlight how proposed policies and programs impact youth. Now, you've heard enough from me, and so I'm going to pass it along to one of our co-leads, Leela, to share how she lives this work out at her work with Peak Initiative.
Thank you, Clintel. I'm Leela Weatherall. I'm the Director of Teen and Community Programs at the Kellogg Peak Initiative. The work that we are doing here with the Youth Forward Coalition resonates with the work I do here at Peak because it aligns with our mission. Our mission is to bring out the limitless potential in young leaders through extraordinary experiences and nurturing relationships. And by being a leadership-focused organization, we believe that in order to support young people in their leadership journey, that these 3 pieces are necessary. With building authentic partnerships, we find this important in the work we do because we need to acknowledge that we are not experts in everything. And we need to build these partnerships to provide our young people with resources and network opportunity for them to grow and know all that they have access to in our communities. For creating spaces, this is something that we thrive to do here at Peak for our young people in grades 1st through 12th grade, as we are centered in youth in the work we do, and it's crucial for us to continue to provide programs and spaces where they can show up, they can learn skills, explore their own talents, and find spaces to lead. Lastly, something I believe Milwaukee as a whole has struggled with but is thriving towards is creating that shift in power. In the work I do here at Peak, I'm continuing to do more than provide space, but really understanding that we need to provide opportunities to put all of these relationships and spaces and experience that we're giving them through the programs into action for real change.
But what we love to do is take a few moments here just to surface full group some of those reflections that came in those breakouts, knowing that we only had time today to dive in deep into one priority area, but really all 3 are dependent upon one another. In order for any of them to be successful, they all must be successful and happening together. So would love to lift up and leave space now for folks to come off mute and share some ideas and thoughts that really resonated with them from their breakout discussion.
I'm willing to
I can start. I led the Create Space group, and I just want to give a shout out to Yesenia for being the only youth in that group, but really talking about, how we can really make decisions or really be improve our work through youth involvement in decision making. But also we talked about not just giving teens like busy work, whether it's handing out agendas or putting up chairs, but actually having them at the decision table and making those decisions. We talked about being vulnerable. That's one thing that Yesenia talked about, is adults being vulnerable and allowing teens that space to make those decisions and lead those conversations. I think as adults, sometimes it's hard for us to give up that power in some of those spaces, especially to young people, when we think that we have more experience, or we can do it, but it's an opportunity for adults to just be vulnerable and to trust that young people can make those decisions and be at the table with them as well.
So Glenn, the thing that I was going to lift up aligns with that. So in our group, we explored and we were shifting power. The question really is, do we vet adults the way we vet young people, right? So we often say, do they have the qualifications? Do they have the skills? And so we kind of toy with what it looks like to make sure that adults get the training and support they need too, because we don't always know what to do to ensure that we have full equity in a space. We also talked about the importance of making sure that our young people have mentors and people to sponsor them through processes, and to ensure that we get as many young people as possible, to use Jackie's word, in the funnel, because not everyone makes it through. So the more young people that we can empower, instill these kind of values into, the more likely we are to have the impact that we want to see. If there's others from Shift Power who would like to share, feel free to come off mute.
All right. So we were in the Build Authentic Partnerships. We spoke about a few different topics. One being really making sure that authentic partnerships align with the missions and breaking down silos in Milwaukee, understanding that young people that organizations aren't there to gatekeep young people, that we should be sharing resources and sharing experiences and connecting them, as well as looking at taking it a step farther and building more authentic partnerships with funders so they understand the work firsthand that is needed. If anyone else from the group wants to share, feel free.
Well, if nobody else will, I will. I kind of wanted Kyle to jump in there, and Linnell and all of that stuff, Bernard. But we talked about how, true collaboration and partnership happens when folk are actually not just honoring that commitment, but we got to get philanthropy to change how it incites or incents collaboration, true collaboration among partner nonprofit organizations. Linnell mentioned, there's a gazillion, he didn't use that word, but gazillion mentoring organizations out here, and people will hold on to their wait lists rather than call up another mentoring organization to say, hey, got some more folks, would you just help and take? And I said, and our friend, my colleagues from GMF jumped right in there, Andy and Danny, around, well, y'all were schooled to do that as nonprofits. You were schooled to fight over that little bitty piece of pie. And, and we talked about 1 year versus multi-year. The incentive to really go bold, to do it with everybody, has to be a part of the change in terms of authentic partnership.
Thank you. I'll pause. Was someone else coming off mute?
Yeah. One of our members in the Create Space talked about how if we were able to actualize this goal, it would move the mindset of Black male youth as deficits into as a mindset of assets, and that they're contributing to the community and that they're active members of the community who have value and who are valuable. So just wanted to put that in there.
All right. Thank you for sharing those ideas and reflections. It was really great to hear the discussion that happened in my group. I was in Build Authentic Partnerships. But similar to Katina's note when she shared, a lot of the reflections, they build off of one another, right? Like this work needs to be collaborative. We also need to work differently. And we all have our own lanes in which we contribute to this, right? Some of us work directly with youth. And so you are the experts. And so you tell us what practices need to be expanded and continued. Some of y'all work in the funding world. And so you got to get those dollars so that people aren't in survival mode anymore, but also maybe look internally and change some of the ways that we're doing grant making so that we don't force nonprofits and these organizations to compete against one another and do very short-sighted things that don't really get at the root of our issues. And so what I'm going to share towards our last end here, and so we may actually end early. And so for those of you who are coming straight from a long day at work or school, you can get to dinner quite quickly. I'm just going to overview what is next, right? So we did a lot of talking around these priorities. What's the next step? What are we going to do? And so what's next? Long term, we hope this coalition will continue to ideate and decide and create milestones of what this work needs to look like. But to get us started, we have a few strategies that we want to implement. The first for building authentic partnerships is building a strategic financing plan. Right now, we are conducting a fiscal map to understand all of the public dollars that are currently being invested in mental health services, preventative mental health services, and workforce development programs for youth and Black male youth specifically in the city. And so once that fiscal map is created, the next step is to really understand what is the need for funding and how can we what are some strategies to be able to get access to more funding in those areas. Something particular that's going to be coming up this summer is really the next round of ARPA dollars will be dropping for our county and our city. And so we'll be putting together a work group to really analyze that fiscal map once we have it and look at the data and really decide on some next steps and being strategic on where do we want to advocate for more funding and investment from our city and county along these services and along these ideas that we're naming as a need for resources for our young people. The next area for creating space is our Design Your Future project implementation. And so we have David Emmanuel Castillo from Equitable Systems Consultants working as our project manager on this. And he will be building out implementation plans over the next month with budgets and then in May throughout September, doing stakeholder engagement. So he will be working with schools and nonprofits and organizations like those who are on this call to be able to identify folks who are willing to be bold and implement our young people's ideas to fruition. Part of this process is we are fundraising. And so Milwaukee Succeeds originally dedicated $10,000 per proposal idea. Our youth came with it last summer and realized that we're going to need a lot more money to be able to fully implement their ideas the way that they intended. And so we have a fundraising goal of $600,000. And so if you have ideas around grants or connections to donors and funding and want to talk and collaborate around that, that's the next step that you can support us in as well, is that resource development or being an implementation partner for those proposals. And then finally, for shifting power, we want to develop a youth impact assessment. And so a youth impact assessment is an agreed upon set of questions that summarizes the potential effects of proposed or existing law, policies, program, or practices on young people. And so this can look a lot of different ways. We could attach a youth impact assessment to the county budget. They already have a racial equity impact assessment. And so we'd be adding a youth lens so that any resources that are allocated goes through this youth-centered question first. We also could do it at a city level or state, really looking at policy related to youth justice and thinking about how our criminal justice systems are built and are they really designed to best serve youth and really prevent youth from getting in the system in the first place. And finally, our third option is the Milwaukee Public Schools, ensuring a youth-centered approach to both their budget allocations, but then also policy and things that would be passed moving forward by the board. If you are interested in policy or just curious about what a youth impact assessment could be, definitely sign yourself up for wanting to join a planning committee around this. We're in the initial stages of really just exploring. Where first we need to identify what's going to be our government aid entity that we prioritize doing this work, and then being able to develop a work group, including youth, where we actually devise and create the youth impact assessment itself and be able to push forward its implementation. And so with that, I do want to acknowledge our co-leads for this coalition. You saw all of their logos probably in the slideshow, but I do want to call them out by name, as some unfortunately couldn't be here today due to some personal and family crises, but have dedicated a lot of work and effort. And so I want to take a moment just to acknowledge them. Our co-lead and steering committee for this coalition are Donnell Hauser from Lad Lake, Linnell Ramey from Mentor Greater Milwaukee, Kim Marath from Milwaukee Public Schools, Leela Weatherall from Peak Initiative, Charlene Moore from Urban Underground and Youth Justice MKE, Glenn Carson from the YMCA, Vanessa Carmona Lewis from Employ MKE. Our youth are Maya Baldwin, who is a junior at Milwaukee School of Languages, Daynee was a freshman at Mesmer High School, Delonte Henderson was a student at MATC, Daquan Shannon was a freshman at Marquette University, Kesion Harrell, who's a student at MATC, and Kaylee Marsh, who's a senior at Milwaukee High School of the Arts. And with that, I'm going to pass it to one of our co-leads, Glenn, to close us out and give you all one final call to action.
Hello, everybody. So my name is Glenn Carson. I am the Senior Director of Team Programming with the YMCA of Metropolitan Milwaukee. Joining the Youth Forward MKE Coalition has been a great opportunity for me personally to learn and build on my passion of youth leadership. I'm new to my role at the YMCA, and with this role, I have the power to bring youth to the table. I've always believed in the power of young people, but joining the coalition has allowed me to practice what I preach and challenge myself to be more intentional in practicing youth and adult equity. One of the things I immediately gravitated towards was the Youth Voice Ladder. I brought that back to my team here at the Y to ensure that we use this regularly when making decisions around our youth programming, not just here in my department, but also in other departments of the YMCA as well. When it comes to the 3 goals of the coalition, I've been more intentional since joining this coalition in building our authentic partnerships by really understanding the interests of our teens and what success looks like for them, and aligning our partnerships and programs to their needs as well. When it comes to creating space that centers around perspective of our teens, I now start each of our meetings with highlighting our agreed upon community norms and giving opportunities to revise or add when new people or teams are added to our space. When it comes to shifting power, I am looking forward to doing more in this space and allowing our teams to do more work that really drives decision-making in our program, and not just busy work around handing things out or cleaning up. This work and mindset shift does not happen overnight, but the coalition has really helped me be more intentional in bringing these practices to my daily work with Milwaukee youth. With all of that said, I wanted to express how this group can be a great opportunity to bring the youth of Milwaukee to the table, not just in this space in coalition, but at all of your organizations and companies as well. I leave you with a few call to action items. Get involved and join the Youth Forward MKE Coalition. Challenge your organizations to bring youth to the table, and use the youth ladder to measure how much youth input you are using when it comes to make decision making.
And I'll leave the last word to some of our youth MCs to say goodnight.
Bye.
Have a good one, guys.